Welcome to Mindset Mondays with Dr. D, the Mindset Doc. Mindset Mondays is designed for people just like you, desiring insight, awareness, and redirection on how to leverage that mindset for more agile living. Because today's world, big challenge, wouldn't you agree? And so we need to be able to learn from others and gain insights on how have other people successfully navigated through some more challenging times. And so I bring together on Mindset Mondays subject matter experts from well-established businesses, startups, successful entrepreneurs who've sort of navigated through and have some things to offer on the other side. And so I'm delighted today to have with us Mala Subramanian. I hope I said that right. Mala, I'm so excited, has been featured on Forbes, Newsweek, and many podcasts across the country. In fact, I just learned momentarily ago that she was invited to speak at Dartmouth in September and actually delivered 2 programs. And so clearly a voice to be reckoned with. And that program too was featured by Forbes, Entrepreneur, and many others. And so Mala, welcome. I'd love to have you here today.
Thank you. This is great. I am glad to be here. And it's funny that my book is focused on mindset, and I'm talking to somebody who specializes in that. It's almost like we can connect easily without any issues.
I'm sure we can. And I think that's what the forces of the universe brought us together for that reason, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm really excited. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Great, great. Yeah, I'm excited too. We have 6 key things that we want to share with our listeners and viewers today. And I first want to tell you a little bit more about Mala. She is a corporate speaker, executive coach, and cross-cultural trainer. Another thing we have in common, by the way, who offers a blend of Eastern and Western philosophies for negotiations. And being a mediator myself for nearly 30 years, that's key in that how we know how to negotiate in every walk of life, right?
Yes.
She spent over 20 years in influential marketing and strategy roles for global customers like IBM, GE Healthcare, Dun & Bradstreet, all well-known names. And Mala has led webinars and on-site courses and provided coaching for Cognizant and Meltwater, among many others. And so again, Mala, delighted to have you here today.
I am delighted to be here.
Well, throughout our program, I am going to be asking you about your recently released best-selling book, Beyond Wins: Eastern Mindset for Success in Daily Business Negotiations. And one of the things that I was attracted to by the overview is what you said, when it says, when it comes to business negotiations, don't look at it as an opportunity to win. And instead, feel the pain of dealing with customers, vendors, employees, bosses, because we do. I mean, it's challenging, on a day-to-day basis. And so, it's really flexing that mindset again about, it doesn't stop with one negotiation. It's how you can build and continue to learn from that. And so, Mila, I'd like to start off with first ask you this. What is the difference between a winning mindset and a success mindset? And which one gets you further?
Thank you. Perfect lead in. Winning is there's a start and a finish. When you're finished, there's a winner and there's a loser.
Mm-hmm.
And so one walks away all gleeful and glad and joyful. The other one is feeling totally let down. And consistently, if you're winning and you're making the other person even feel like a loser, that relationship is gone.
Yeah.
You cannot maintain that relationship, whether it's a relationship with a colleague, a vendor, a business partner, a client. The more and more you win and the more and more they lose, they're not on your journey anymore. Success, on the other hand, is a journey. It is a long-term relationship that yields results. So you're not looking for the immediate gratification. So if I go to a client and the client says, Mala, I want you to do extra training classes, but I'm not going to pay you more, and I immediately react and say no, and I make them pay, basically they lose. And I think I won, but in the long run, I'm going to lose the client if I keep reacting like
Mhm.
that. And, this dawned on me, if I may call you Deborah, uh,
Please.
and, it dawned on me when I was laid off by IBM.
Mm.
I was a senior professional analyzing some of the major companies like application vendors like Oracle and SAP. And my sessions were heard worldwide about what is going on with each of these. So I had risen to fairly a high level in each company that I worked for. Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Chase Manhattan, Dun and Bradstreet, IBM, and then later on GE. I was always, would come in and do the projects well. And at that time, it didn't matter to me who I was taking on my journey. And I would win and get a lot of visibility. I would reach the C suite very rapidly because I was focused on doing the right thing and doing all these projects. And I lost a lot of friends. I lost friends, I lost colleagues, I lost business partners. There were vendors who didn't even want to work with me because I was extremely aggressive
Mm.
in achieving the projects. It's not that I meant to offend anybody, but I wasn't looking sideways. I was just looking straight up to my goal. And when I was sitting, after I was laid off, I was sitting outside the IBM parking lot for a long time. And I was just thinking, what happened? Here, this is the big blue, and I was laid off, and I thought I did very well. And there were so many people listening to me and everything. What did I do wrong? And then suddenly I said, yeah, I may have won, but I don't think I really, I really got the results and lasting results. I've lost so many friends and everything. So what did I do wrong?
Mm.
And I felt like I had lost some of the Indian values that I came up with. India is all about long-term relationships.
Mhm.
You cannot negotiate a deal in India without having a relationship with that person, a business relationship with that person, or a friendship with that person. You can, here in the United States, you can strike a deal with somebody, do the transaction, and then you're gone. It's
Mhm.
a very transaction based relationship. Here, what I did was I did the transaction based relationship here. Everything was an event. There was a winner and the loser, and most likely it was me, the winner. And I lost a lot of things that I normally cherish. So I said, I really need to go back to my roots.
Mm.
Yes, I do want results, but I want relationship. And at the same time, I don't want to lose the values that are important here in the United States about independence and the time value of money and everything. So I cherish that. So let me do something that combines the both. And I said, I need to train others. When I was sitting in the parking lot, it was almost 5 p.m. Everybody was walking out. I wanted to go to each person and say, hey, stop winning, start succeeding. And that was my understanding between winning and success. So I started training. And when I started the training, I think almost about a year or two into it, somebody in the class said, Mala, you should teach this or write a book about this
Mm.
so that you are preparing people to take the actual negotiation class, the real negotiation classes that are done by Harvard and other major universities is focused on the tools and techniques
Mhm.
and how to handle situations, how to handle people. Whereas you're teaching how to change your mindset,
Yeah.
how to frame your mind so that you can succeed and use all the tools and techniques. If you don't have the right mindset, then
Mhm.
all the tools and techniques are basically a waste.
Yeah.
So it was a long-winded answer to your question, and I hope I addressed what you were asking.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I know when having been a mediator for a long time, and then also bring the psychology into it. When I myself went back for my doctorate degree, less than 10 years ago, it was pleasing to sort of revisit some of the roots of my psychology background, but also to get acquainted with some of the more current neuroscientific findings. And so very much, working with the works of Carl Dweck, fixed versus a growth mindset was definitely very much in there. And so I like how you've built on that for that, winning mindset versus success mindset. And I know from one of my mentors, Mala, is that, again, coming from a mediation and psychology background, as he did too, he reframed, the win-win mindset to how can we both gain mindset.
Exactly.
So it's very similar to what you're talking about, is that because winning still represents something competitive. But if we talk about both gaining, now we're talking about mutual outcomes.
Absolutely. I love that. I think, and that's what I said, a win. Somebody asked me, how do you measure win and win-win?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a race where, you have to run the 5 miles and within a thing, and the person who wins it, who reaches there fast is a winner. In a business setting where you have to negotiate every day with colleagues, there's no such thing as a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
I think gaining is a better terminology.
Yeah. Well, particularly when there needs to be ongoing relationships, like there must be within an organization or doing business with an organization. It's not a one-time event. You hope that there's ongoing, repeated events based on the quality of that relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I'd like to get, your notions as far as your strategy to negotiation, because I think a lot of people go, oh, I don't know how to negotiate, but the reality is we negotiate every day. It's just a matter of how clear are we, and are we really being mindful about how we approach a negotiation? So I'd love to hear more about what you have to say on that.
Sure. I think the most important thing, a lot of people, look at negotiation as like two people sitting at the opposite ends of the table, and terms and contracts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm thinking negotiation is, how do I solve the problem?
Yeah.
And or if it is an opportunity, how do I leverage and get something out of that opportunity?
Yeah.
So that both sides walk away in the long term with results that are good for both.
Mm-hmm.
And also it kind of a binding relationship. They have an understanding. Okay, I making somebody else win is also part of success.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody else, because of you, somebody else gains, then that is success for you. So looking at negotiation more of as a problem and a solution, and that also leads me to a lot of people jump into negotiation without thinking clearly. And to me, a lot of people think communication is like a conversation, and to me, communication is a conversation that leads to a shared understanding. You don't have a shared understanding of the problem. Like if I'm saying something and you're saying something, and both of us are not meeting or not having a shared understanding of what we are saying, then there is no negotiation.
Right.
And most 90% of the negotiations at work are done before that shared understanding, what I call the common understanding, is reached. I use the the analogy of a signal, traffic signal, the red light, the yellow, and the green. So when somebody says something and you react, it's a red light. And the yellow is where you pause. Like when there's a yellow, you pause, waiting to go. So to me, that is the stage where you're trying to analyze to see, did I understand the problem? They are saying they want the results sooner. Why do they want it? I'm reacting saying I can't give it because I don't have the resources. Do I need to pay more if I have to give the results or do more training? Instead, ask the 5 whys. Why is that person asking that? What is causing them? Are they having any problems? So trying to understand, and then the green light is when you can go. But even before you go, you want to make sure, you want to look around to see nobody else is violating the rule.
Mhm.
If you think it's green and I can go, and then somebody else is coming in because saying, oh, I want to beat the red, then you're going to have a collision. And that's what happens in negotiation, because you kind of start negotiating in the red and the yellow lights. And then you say, oh, I succeeded, or I won, or I lost. You didn't win or lose. You just didn't come to a proper understanding of the problem.
Mm.
So to me, that is the most critical thing about any problem solving or any negotiation. And I come from a background of doing a lot of math. I love math. So
Mm.
to me, unless I have a very good, solid understanding or a shared understanding of the problem, I do not negotiate.
Mm.
And this is what I taught in my class. I had this communication signal. People loved it, because they could relate to it. And particularly the common understanding where you think you can go once the green light is there. No, because somebody else could be violating the rules and you could collide.
I really love that analogy, Mala, as far as the stoplights. So yes, particularly in this country, that's something we can readily identify with because we deal with that all the time. What you had to say reminds me of a model, although I might try to apply your stoplight analogy to it, because I oftentimes say, we need to understand the facts of whatever it is that we're dealing with, or whatever brings us like to mediation, for example. What did happen? But we don't want to stay stuck there. We instead want to move into, and maybe this is like your yellow light, we want to move into, well, how are you impacted by what happened then? And so then that gets at the emotion that, at least we in mediation feel is so critical, is like, what's important to you about that? Why do you have this position? Why do you have that mindset? And then we need to move on to what's important to you and how we move forward. And so it's very much a historical to a present to a future forward then, in terms of how can we, create opportunity out of where we are, but through that shared or mutual understanding.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people think that you need consensus on terms and contracts and the pricing and everything. What you need consensus is on the understanding of the problem.
Mm.
Because if you have the problem right, the solution is not far off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very good. I like that. So, one of the things that, you referenced, how to clear your mind before a scary meeting. So what do you recommend? Because I know going into meetings, I like to call them different and sometimes difficult situations. People do get overwhelmed with that, and they really don't know how to prepare themselves effectively to stay calm and collected and be able to focus on what needs to be done. I know what I do, but so what do you share? What do you recommend?
Sure. I think the noise, and this is something I say in the book, the noise in your head can be a lot louder than the noise in a busy traffic.
Yeah.
Because it is so, and it is all about preconceived notions. Like yeah, if I'm having, going into a negotiation, and it's like, oh, that person is definitely not going to agree with my terms, they're going to sabotage me. I know, I know this person, she's, so all that noise in your head is going to clutter the meeting and actually destroy any chances of you having a successful negotiation. So, what do you do? I can give you one simple example.
Okay.
I had just completed a very, very stressful training on conflict resolution. I, in fact, was there coaching two people who were having major differences. And I had just resolved it. And I came out of it, and my head, was like full of that conflict. So I had not cleared my head when the training manager who had sent me to help with this conflict resolution called me and she said, Mala, we need to discuss about the coaching. We have to scale down, and we're also trying to bring other coaches. And she started saying things that I felt threatened. Oh my God, they're going to fire me. I'm not going to have this. So I reacted.
Mm.
I said, this is the first time, so I reacted, and the reaction was in anger.
Mm.
And the anger was not because of what she said, it's what was happening in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, in order for you to clear, you need to listen to some music, and also listen to speeches of some great minds, which kind of expands your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is the most important thing about a mindset. You expand your thinking. And this is what I teach in my public speaking and presentation classes, and in communications or teamwork. Before you go to a meeting, expand your mind. Think on a broader level. I listen to Steve Jobs
Okay.
and his speech in colleges, universities, and I listen to Gandhi, and some of these speakers who were thinking broadly about how they can help others.
Right.
And once you get into that mindset, you're not going there in an attack mode. Your
Yeah.
mind is clear. So you listen to music, you can do meditation. Some people, when their mind is too disturbed, they cannot meditate.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is take a nice long walk. It clears your mind. You
Mm-hmm.
see nature is the best healer.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the ways that you can silence yourself. And when you gain that, and silence is not being quiet, silence is your nature, it is your inner self. So when you resort to that, then you're more balanced.
Okay.
And also remember the goal. And this is what I tell people: you remember the goal that you're there for. My goal in that company that I reacted to, the training manager, is to expand my responsibility there as an executive coach. And what am I doing? I'm reacting, and then immediately in a few minutes, and she said, Mala, I can't believe you're reacting like this. And here you are, you teach all these things. And then that pulled me back. And then I said, can I call you back? And then I calmed down, listened to some music and everything. When I went back, we had a very nice conversation. So at the end of it, she said, Mala, I want to give you a leadership role in setting up this executive coaching for our company. So to me, that is what is important, to expand your mind. And the
Mm-hmm.
best way to expand is listen to music, walk outside, listen to some great speakers who basically changed the way the world is today. So,
Yeah. Well, you've said several things that I just really resonate with, and I had the good fortune of interviewing Gary Malkin back in August on my Mindset Mondays, and Gary is actually a 5-time Emmy music composer, and so very famous. But he had a harrowing, life-changing experience in 1999, and he really I don't remember the specifics, but he really, used that opportunity in his healing and recovery to really look at the use of his music in different kinds of ways. And so he actually has a whole, theoretical model on vibrational intelligence. We have our intellectual intelligence. I talk a lot about our emotional intelligence, and now the vibrational intelligence. And I agree, music is a huge way to calm yourself down and to get into a different mindset. And I know I've shared with many people before, when I was working on my doctoral dissertation, my usual music wasn't cutting it. It was like, well, this is odd. I've always been able to relax and get creative around this stuff. But I realized that this was different, trying to put all that I'd studied for a couple of years into this, doctoral dissertation. And so I before I could really get started, I would listen to different kinds of music. And I now I love, I know I love relaxation music on Pandora. It tends to be very, piano oriented, which I love. And then also classical romance music also tends to be, so
That's
piano is my favorite and no lyrics, and it just puts me in the mood. I took a walk this morning with my dog and sure enough, he was like, oh, I feel so different now after listening to my favorite music. So yeah, there is something about music, how it can open up the literally the neurobiological spaces in our brain that actually creates opportunities for us to take in more, absorb more, reflect differently, and then therefore think differently.
that is it's wonderful that I'm hearing that from you, because you have the scientific background and you can put it in scientific terms, which is great because it's kind of proof. and
Hmm.
and I also tell people, if you're going to listen to music, like you said, the instrument is better
Yes.
because there are no words
Hmm.
that might conflict with your, with what is going on. So
Hmm.
instrument like India has sitar,
Right.
flute. I think like you said, piano, string instruments,
Hmm.
they kind of are very soothing.
Yes. Yes. And I used to be a flute player, so
Oh,
I guess
oh, really?
that resonates with me. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned well, you mentioned how you reacted, and I oftentimes will share with my coaching clients that if something pops in your head, that's probably the thing you do not want coming out of your mouth. Okay, because if it pops in your head, it probably is going to come out with a fear or a reaction or even a tone, or inflection that doesn't resonate well with other people. So that's where finding your presence. But you mentioned that was your own reaction and fear, and so I'd like to hear your input about what do you feel is the most dangerous emotion and what can people do about it.
Sure, sure. And just if I can just go back a little and add to what you said, reaction comes from ego,
Mm,
from a hurt ego
okay.
surface. So, and that's what I have noticed. I was hurt. How dare
Mm.
they talk to somebody else? you know, and I thought I was the executive coach
Yes.
of the company. So anyway, going into fear, one of the things I feel is, fear comes from thinking what is going to happen to me,
Mhm,
what is going to happen to me, and am I going to be fired, or am I going to lose? So
mhm,
it's all about me, gratifying yourself, your desires, and your anxieties and everything. Whereas the way to turn it around is courage. And what is courage? Courage is basically asking, how is this impacting the other person? What can I do to help the other person? And I can give you a very basic example. I mean, you, with all your background in psychology, probably will relate to this example better than anybody else. Is, I was traveling, it was a flight and it was very turbulent.
mhm,
And I was sitting in the corner, and there was somebody sitting in the middle, and I hate the middle seats because they are really. And then there was someone in the aisle seat, and the turbulence, and the person sitting in the middle was a fairly young person, and she was, yeah, I don't know, I was like, oh my god, how do I tell my family if something happens to me? I'm
mhm.
thinking about myself. Oh my god, how do I protect myself? What can I do? And then I turn around and I look at her. She is frozen,
Wow.
and she's in the middle, and she looked like, she was near to tears. And then immediately, my fear, the way I took care of my fear, was by looking at the other person and saying, how can I help her? So
Mm,
I turned around and I said, are you okay? And I said, if you don't mind, because I don't want to impose on somebody. If you don't mind, I don't mind holding your hand so that you can relax. And I held her hand, and we talked, and within 15 minutes, even though the turbulence was there,
Mhm.
the turbulence in her mind had gone, and the turbulence in my mind also had disappeared. So to me, I always say that when you're really, really anxious or frozen with fear, you turn around and see how you can help somebody else. And immediately that turns to courage.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it gives your, by taking the focus off yourself, then you're actually helping redirect somebody else's fear reaction. And I love how you use, the turbulence out there to the turbulence in our mind, because oftentimes we create that turbulence, don't we? Yeah.
Turbulence wasn't as much as it had kept in my mind. Maybe, I survived and came back. So, no, that I think that is, and that's what I teach in my executive coaching and training.
Okay.
Don't go there with fear and anxiety, because when you have fear and anxiety, then definitely the results are not going to be good.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot negotiate in fear. Whereas turn it into courage and see, hey, here's an opportunity. How can I help my client?
Mm.
Instead of thinking, oh, the client is going to fire me or I'm going to lose the thing, go in and see how you can help the client.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about the wins or the losses. Think about the broader long term.
Mm-hmm.
How can I help the client? And eventually, that would help build a relationship. So,
Yeah.
so that's my biggest thing about fear and courage, and that is the only way you can handle fear. In at least in my opinion, I'm sure other people have other suggestions, but I feel like that's a very critical way, in particularly in business dealings.
Yeah. Well, I liken it to, for a long time, it was a colleague of mine, Dr. Nancy Love, who really, I think, coined this some nearly 20 years ago. But we used it a lot when we were training professionals to become mediators. And so, we want to develop that, inquisitive mind. We want to inquire about things so that we can understand underlying, concerns and interests. And so, much like you used the word courage, she would say we need to be curious enough to be courageous.
Yes.
Okay. And that's really what you were talking about, is turning from self to somebody else to say, how can I help this other person? But we also have to be courageous enough to be curious.
Exactly.
So if we stay stuck in our fear, then we're not exemplifying courage, and therefore we cannot pay attention to other people around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and I've seen that every time I was laid off, every company that I went to, I'm a catalyst for change.
Mhm.
Every time I went, I did something to make changes happen, and people got uncomfortable. And invariably, when there was a layoff, I was the first one to go out.
Yeah.
So, when I was laid off, that's what the counselor, the first time, the career counselor,
Mhm.
she was tremendous. She said, Mala, sit down. You're sitting in fear. You've been laid off for the first time. You're not used to this. You come from a culture where they don't lay off people like that, and so you are not used to it. Sit down and write down all your accomplishments.
Mhm.
And I teach this every time. I tell people when they've been laid off or anything, or if they are feeling like their boss is being nasty to them and they've lost their self-confidence, the best way to build it is sit down and write your accomplishments and how you got there. How
Mhm.
did you achieve? And once you look at it, after the fifth accomplishment, my confidence was up. And that's what I teach people.
Mhm.
Before you go into negotiation, before you go into anything, sit down and write how you accomplished. What are your strengths? What accomplishments have happened in the past 5 years? So that's one way of getting over your fears is particularly if you've lost your self-confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I was coaching a client just recently and something similar in the sense of, she actually came across fairly well at work, but had a personal relationship that had undermined her confidence. And so, and she'd been laid off from a prior job. And so she was sort of a double whammy, shall we say. And so, clearly seemed like she had a lot on the ball going. And so one of her activities was to go and talk to 5 family members or friends and ask them to identify 2 or 3 things that they valued about her. And oh man, she came back feeling so different, and in some cases we had to help her tone down a little bit about how she showed up at work, because she was actually so confident when it came to work, but she was coming across in ways that people couldn't continue listening to her. Sort of like what you're talking about is too much change can actually, lead people to go away from you.
Exactly. And I think the person that you're working with, probably I was that person too.
Possibly. So I'm curious, because you said that, after being laid off, you sort of went back to, and you realized the impact of sort of Western ways on your negotiation strategy. You went back to some of your Eastern roots. And so I'd like to know, what is it that you pass on to either, Westernized clients or Eastern clients in terms of how do they work together?
I think I actually say don't look at behaviors. That's my first advice.
Okay.
Is don't look at behaviors. Just look to see what drives behaviors.
Okay.
And the 3 key values,
Mhm.
if I can take the United States and India and give an example,
Mhm.
India, very important is status, hierarchy,
Okay.
very hierarchical structure, even now. And the India time is not time value of money. It's more time is, the Sanskrit term for is kal. Kal means passage. So it's not a fixed time, it's fluid. And the other one is relationship, which we have talked about. So those are 3 very key. It's a we group. They will not come to a meeting and talk about themselves. It's not an I me culture. It's more we. It's funny. Like one of the people raised here, the American, asked me, why is it that this guy came to an interview and he kept saying we the whole time? And I asked him, who is the other one who helped him in the project? And he didn't say anyone. He didn't mention anyone. I said, that's the Indian culture.
Mm.
It's very, very shy of using the word I.
Ah.
So it's a very group connected culture. If you give a project to an Indian, there will be 10 people behind him to help him. And he or she would not like recognition, team, group recognition, individual recognition. So there are some companies who have lost employees because they have been given rewards in front of everybody,
Mm.
and so that is that culture. And then now you look at our culture here in the United States, which is all about to each his own,
Right.
independent thinking. Time is money. And I can work with anybody. I don't need to know that person. You and I can have a business dealing, and I can walk out and say goodbye, and you'll say goodbye. And there's no need for that relationship to last.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very transactional.
Yeah.
So what and also because of the status and the thing, and the Indians would not speak up when their client is there or when their manager is there. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. People would think, okay, she is dumb, she doesn't know what to say, or she is hiding something. So
Mm.
and so there is an indirect way of speaking. All this boils down to an indirect way of speaking in India and a direct way of speaking here. So
Okay.
in negotiation, you're working with somebody, you are direct, you're saying, I cannot do this. it'll cost this much, and you know how to push back, and you will give individual recognition for the person, and you let people speak up here. India is just the opposite, indirect communication. They'll tell you, I'll try. Indians know I'll try means no. But we here in the United States don't know that.
Hmm.
So there have been a lot of miscommunications. And in India, the contract is nothing, it has no value. A written document doesn't have any value.
Hmm.
So here you are, you've drawn a contract, you're thinking, okay, that's it. It's signed, sealed, and I can come here and things will happen. No, the negotiation starts after the contract is signed. You have now got a relationship. So these are the things. So when I talk to Indians, I'll tell them what is important for the United States: time, independence,
Mhm.
and transactional. And also time means process. Here we have a process for everything. It's very structured, organized. Anyone can come to the United States and come in and go to a restaurant, check into a hotel, find the flights, everything. In India, you have to rely on people. It's a very interdependent society. You go there and door number 70, you'll think door number 70 is next to door number 68. It's not like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Somebody has to take you to that house. So it's, oh, no, that house is there. This person thought this number was, they didn't want to give up this number, so they have kept this number.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very extremely relationship group oriented society. So these are some of the things that I teach people. When I teach Indians, I tell them, you have to be direct. It took me, I did a class in India. It took me almost 2 hours to convince somebody to say no. And I'm not kidding. It was so funny. I said, oh my God. Maybe I was like that too. In a social setting, I don't say no. If somebody invites me to a party, I don't say no.
Okay.
I think it's rude. So I'll say, okay, I'll try. So the, Indians will know, okay, she's not going to come because she's being polite. Whereas an American will think, okay, she's going to try. I better get some food ready for
Yeah. Yep. Yes. Well, I know, with some of the trainings that I've done and let's say it applies more to women, but not always, but at least the people who I've had approached me in classes is, difficulty in saying no, particularly on the job. And so they get overwhelmed, they can't focus, and then they feel underappreciated, and so there are ways to say no without shutting the door, and so that becomes a huge part of it too. I don't know how that would translate into Indian culture. I'm curious, we are certainly in a day and age today compared to where we were a number of months ago. And I know countries throughout the world have varied on this. And I know people in India, so we talk periodically and how are things going there. And certainly you have a much denser population in India. So, I'm always curious, well, how is the country managing COVID-19, And so I'm curious from your perspective then, what recommendations do you have as far as how we communicate around COVID-19 and how to bring this pandemic under control and getting back to, I know it's not going to go back to the way it was, but how do we get to a different way of living? And so what are your thoughts about that, Mala?
Here in the United States?
Yeah.
Okay. It's so funny. I did a talk in UCSD, and it was very young people. And I did a cross-cultural communications. And I said, if you were going to communicate the ground rules for COVID to survive, this is what you would say to Indians, and this is what you would say to the Americans raised here. And it's all about the values. See, here, mandating is not acceptable because we are very independent in our thinking. And and also telling them, oh, you're going to lose family members is not going to matter. In India, you can tell them wear a mask, otherwise you're going to lose your sister, brother, extended family, grandfather, grandmother.
Mhm.
They will wear 10 masks
Mm.
because that matters. Not that the people here don't care. It because that situation has never arisen. Because India is, even though it's a nuclear family, they live as a joint family.
Yeah.
The whole community, the whole neighborhood will know what's happening.
Yeah.
So here the message is more, you're going to lose your independence.
Mm.
If you don't wear a mask, you're going out, you're going to lose your job,
Mhm.
you're going to have others lose their jobs. You're not going to have the money to maintain yourself. The healthcare is not going to cover your COVID. And so I think if we talk in terms of money and independence, the message will come out very clear here.
Mm.
And
Okay.
what I see is that message is, so that one of the students, very young, she said, Mala, why don't you say this? I said, who do I tell? Maybe I should write an article about this. I think the message has to be, and it's not that one culture is better than the other.
Mhm.
It's just that I think we need to speak the language of the audience.
Yes.
And I think we're not speaking the language of the audience here. If I went to all the young people, all the people, and said, look, if you don't wear a mask, you're going to lose your independence. You're
Mm.
going to lose your job.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you've hit it right on the nail on the head in that regard, because you know, I do a lot around communication styles anyway, which are worldwide, and unless we open ourselves up to understanding some of the characteristics and focal points of each communication style, we are literally, even though we might be in the same language, we're speaking a different language because we're saying things in ways that people can't understand. And so it's really, I really like what you have to say. And so can we get you a direct line to the incoming president? Or the outgoing president, however you might want to look at it. We still have 2 months.
maybe I can send a note to Kamala.
There we go. There we go. Well, maybe we'll make some headway on this then,
Oh, I would love to join you in sending this message to the public.
Yeah. Okay.
Because and in a book I've written a whole chapter on how to speak to a marketing person, how to speak to a finance person, how to speak to a planner versus a doer and organize, because unless you talk their language, they're not going to respond to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're reacting. Everybody's reacting.
Mhm.
They're not even, forget they're responding, they're reacting. They're all angry. How dare somebody tell us this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
dictatorship.
I sort of did this like it goes right over their head, and I don't mean intellectually that they don't get it, but it should be more like it's going right by them because they're so focused on themselves that they can't see what's happening around them, right? Yeah. Yeah.
They're creating a wall.
Yeah.
They're creating a wall.
Yeah. So I want you to share with us then, as far as where people can best find your book, Beyond Wins: The Eastern Mindset for Success in Daily Business Negotiations. How can they get a hold of it?
Sure. Amazon. It's on Amazon, and also they can go to my website, which is the same name as my book, www.beyondwins.com.
Okay.
And right there, they can click and go to the Amazon site where they can buy the book. They can buy it as an ebook or a digital book or a physical print book.
Okay.
And also if they go to my website and they read the book and they have some comments and they want to communicate with me, there is a way of doing that.
Great. Great. Well, very good. Very good. Any other exciting speaking engagements coming up that you want to tell our listeners and viewers on where to see you next?
I'm speaking, with a person who is started a podcast, and I'm reaching out to universities so that I can teach. I would love to run a workshop using the book as the basis.
Oh, wonderful.
For people. So that is my interest. Thank
Very
you.
good. Well, I'm delighted to have you here today, Mala. It's been an exciting journey for me as a mindset doc to hear how you see and view things. And I love the ideas and principles you brought into our conversation today, as well as what we can learn through your book. And with that, let's keep in touch, and maybe let's write that joint message and get that out there, right?
I would love to work with you on something.
I think it'd be a good fit. I actually have to admit, I think it'd be a good fit. So yeah, again, Mala, thank you so much for being with me today. And again, this is Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc. And we hope that you have gained some new insights, awareness, and influences on how to negotiate differently. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.